Afternoon. My name is Stephen Alaman. I'm with Disability Rights Texas. Disability Rights Texas is the protection and advocacy agency for people with disabilities in our great state. Today, we're sharing developments about the state's 5-year plan to improve services to students with disabilities. As you probably know, at the beginning of this year, the federal government issued a report that found that our state was not serving students with disabilities. As a result, our State Department of Education, or TEA for short, had to write a new plan. Today, I'm going to be addressing 3 questions about that plan and some new developments. First, what is the state's plan? Just as an update and refresher for you. Second, what did the federal government just say about that plan? And third, what is next in putting that plan in place for improving services for students with disabilities in public schools across Texas? We only have a short amount of time today, so let's get started. First question, what is the Texas Education Agency, or TEA, plan for students with disabilities? Here at Disability Rights Texas, we have done several presentations about the plan over the springtime, earlier this year. You can find those Facebook Live events on our Facebook page, as well as on our YouTube page. But for those of you who might be new to this topic, I'll go ahead and give a quick overview. On April 23rd, 2018, our State Department of Education, TEA, did release a plan. It really is divided into 2 main pieces. There is what's known as the Strategic Plan for Special Education, and the second part has the label of the Corrective Action Response. But really, there's 4 main things in the plan. First, it's about how we make sure that students with disabilities get appropriate evaluation and services. Second, it's about how we better educate and inform our teachers and school administrators to meet the needs of students with disabilities. Third, it's about how do we inform parents and families about the kinds of services they can receive in public schools for students with disabilities. And finally, it's about how the State Department of Education, the TEA, will monitor and oversee school districts to make sure they're following all the special education rules. Now, most importantly, what did the federal government just say about our state plan? At the end of last week, on Friday, the 19th of October, the Department of Education issued its review of the TEA plan. Now, the Department of Education has said that they would take a look at the plan, but we did not know exactly when that would happen. So we're excited that the Department of Education did release this letter to the agency last week. So let's talk about that letter from the federal government. Overall, what the federal government said is that the state plan is acceptable. However, they did add 3 important conditions to that plan going forward that we think is going to be beneficial for students with disabilities. So let's talk about those sort of new conditions or add-ons to the plan by the federal government. First, they said that they expect the Texas Education Agency, or TEA, to help in setting up on-site visits in Texas in 2019. So it is important for us to share with you that the federal government will be coming back to Texas sometime next year to take a look at the state of special education for students with disabilities. We don't know the exact time of when that visit will occur, but of course here at Disability Rights Texas, we will share that information with you just as soon as possible. Now, the federal government did not say much about that visit, but we will encourage them, of course, to do more than just come and visit with TEA officials in Austin. We hope that they will get out around the state and conduct town hall forums so that parents, students, and teachers can all come together and share their experiences with improvements and efforts to improve services for students with disabilities. Again, we'll keep you posted about that part of the new letter from the Texas Education Agency about an on-site visit by the federal government in 2019. Next, the federal government added as a new condition in its October 19th letter to TEA that they expect TEA to conduct a representative sample of all school districts across the state to do an extra check in 3 areas about what we call child find, what we call educational placements, and what we call the provision of a free and appropriate public education, or FAPE, FAPE for short. Now, each of those 3 areas, child find, placements, and FAPE, were critical to that federal investigation that was released at the beginning of this year that started this process of the state having to write a new plan for students with disabilities. And just for those who may not be familiar with it, child find is a term in special education that means that it's the duty of the school, not just the parent, to raise concerns about a student with a disability and how that disability might be affecting their ability to learn and progress in school. It's not always up to mom and dad, well, that's certainly fine, to bring issues about a student and their disability to the school's attention. Schools need to pay attention to the children themselves when it comes to their disabilities, and we call that child find. So now we, again, just like the on-site visit plans, we don't know a lot about how the Texas Education Agency will do this representative sample of school districts as an extra check to make sure they're following all special education rules. Of course, here at Disability Rights Texas, we will try to make sure that that representative sample is truly reflective of Texas public education, whether that's by way of areas of the state, types of students enrolled in special education, and other considerations. We'll also be asking, of course, that the results of that review be made public, both for lawmakers and for parents and other stakeholders to see what were the results of that review. Again, continue to follow us and we'll share updates about that review of special education services by Texas Public Schools. Third highlight from the new letter from the federal government to the Texas Education about our state plan is about how the federal government expects all new information about special education services to be provided in the native language of families of students with disabilities. Of course, we know that Texas is a very diverse state. And while Spanish is a very predominant language in Texas, we have to recognize that there are even further languages spoken by many families in the state, including American Sign Language and other languages. The federal government points out to the Texas Education Agency that any new publications that are required by the plan to help make sure that families understand the full special ed process must not only be clear, but be clear in the family's native language. We don't know exactly how this new editions and versions of all the information will be paid for or when they will be published. But again, here at Disability Rights Texas, we will keep you posted just as soon as we know about the availability and release of this additional information on special education in Texas. So those are some of the key highlights from the new letter to from the Department of Education to TEA. A request to do a representative sample of school districts, a request to assist on a new on-site visit in 2019, and to make sure that not all new information about special education in Texas is available in the native language of families in Texas. So now let's move to the third question about what's really next. Of course, the plan, as I mentioned, was adopted in April of 2018, and there's 2 big parts of the plan in terms of implementation, both at TEA as well as at the local level. Let me summarize what's been happening at the state level first. The Texas Education Agency has hired many new staff members in the area of special education, and their job will be to do monitoring visits, visiting school districts, making sure they're following special education rules. Many of those new people are in place, and so we will be expecting them to be visiting school districts across the state very soon. At the state level as well, there's a promise to award many new grants and contracts to vendors to help produce that new information about special education in Texas and do other tasks at the state level that the agency does not have the staffing to do. They'll be relying upon outside vendors, but so far we don't know of those vendors actually having been secured. So beyond the hiring and monitoring staff, we're still waiting at the state level. Now let's talk about what should be happening now at the local level and what you should be seeing. One of the key aspects of the plan is about what is called targeted outreach. Targeted outreach is an effort by school districts to specifically think about families and students who might have been left out of special education in the past for many different reasons. So what we would like for school districts to do is try to identify and target those families and students to invite them into the special education system if that's the right services that they need. So at the local level, you should be aware of some targeted outreach efforts. Also at the local level, there's going to be a new emphasis on training teachers and principals about special education duties. So for instance, at your campus or at your school district, you might want to ask, what has happened in terms of training for our staff? Are they familiar with all the requirements for special education services? Finally, at the local level, they're going to be asked to collect some new information and data. This will be behind the scenes, but will be important for those monitors when they come to visit from the state level to see that they are indeed following all special education rules. So in summary here today, we have a state plan that's been put in place since April. We are starting to see some progress in getting that plan put into place, but I want to emphasize that the plan was written with a top 5-year time frame, and so really this school year is just the very first school year that the plan is to be implemented. We're not at all expecting there to be delays, but it will take a little bit of time for the plan to fully come into place. I want to last mention, of course, that in January of 2019, our state lawmakers will be returning to Austin. So it'll be important for you as our viewers, as parents, as educators, to share your thoughts and perspectives on the special education plan with your local representatives. It's incumbent upon our local elected officials to review the plan to make sure that local school districts and as well as the TEA have the funding they need to follow the plan, and that there is accountability that things will be different and will be improved for students with disabilities. So this has been a quick rundown about the special education plan, what just happened in terms of the federal government review of that plan and their specific requests for some additional activities, and what's going to be happening and what you should be seeing now across the state. If you have questions or comments, please post them. Also, in the comments section following this event, we're also going to post links to the plan and to that federal letter that just came out on October 19th so that you can see it yourself. We hope that you found this information helpful and know that here at Disability Rights Texas, we are working every day to try to improve services for students with disabilities, and we thank you for your attention to us in support of those efforts. Please continue to follow us on social media and like us on Facebook, and we will provide updates as needed. Thank you and have a good day.